DOE's Blue Ribbon Panel on Nuclear Waste meets for the first time. Mine workers urge a BP boycott as a coal-gas feud escalates. We hear from BP CEO Tony Hayward. And paper or plastic, which is greener? We take a look.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. When the Obama administration killed the Yucca Mountain nuclear waste repository last year, Energy Secretary Steven Chu promised a blue ribbon commission to evaluate alternatives. That panel officially met for the first time today in Washington. It's named the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future, but Chu told the 15 experts he wants them to focus on long-term recommendations for the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. That includes whether the U.S. should begin recycling spent nuclear fuel as France does, but it does not include where to actually store any radioactive leftovers. And Chu was clear he doesn't want to hear about Yucca Mountain.
What I don't want the committee to be doing is spending time and saying, looking at past history, was Yucca Mountain a good decision or a bad decision? Whether it can be used as a future repository. Looking to the future, we want to go forward. And so again, your recommendations of all future repositories just have to fold in, interim storage, temporary storage, permanent disposal, all those things. It's a generic, this is not a siting commission.
Well, panel members agreed waste from currently operating nuclear plants can be stored safely for decades, and new plants can be built while waste issues are resolved. But Exelon Chairman John Rowe warned that for his company and others, the lack of national waste policy is an impediment to new investment. Officials at the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant today say they have found the source of a radioactive water leak discovered 2 months ago and stopped it. They say a floor drain in a concrete tunnel clogged with debris and mud, allowing the tritium water to seep through an unsealed joint in the tunnel wall to the soil and eventually into the groundwater. None of the tritium made it into drinking water supplies or the Connecticut River. The plant's license expires in 2012, but owner Entergy is seeking an expansion for another 20 years. The Executive Vice President of Operations, Mark Savoff, said today he regrets the leak occurred and announced the company has started an effort to become an industry leader in tritium leak prevention and detection. Water issues have taken center stage among many this week as it's designated World Water Week. Water experts have worked hard to raise awareness of what they believe is a growing water crisis. We talked to Ben Grumbles, former EPA water administrator, now director of the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, about the impact of water and climate change.
I think most people first thought, oh, it's all about the icebergs and it's about the glaciers and it's about the sea level rise. Water is such an integral part. It runs through all of the climate change policy. Climate change is water change, and so there's a real need to adopt water policies that mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, like saving water saves energy, and also adapting water programs and natural resource programs in the era of climate change and clean energy.
And you can watch more of my interview with Ben Grumbles coming up this Sunday, March 29th on Clean Skies Sunday, airing on ABC's WJLA at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Meantime, the International Energy Agency says it expects nuclear power to be more cost competitive than coal and natural gas when borrowing costs are low. IEA released a study looking at cost data for 190 plants in 21 countries under 2 discount rate scenarios. That's a measure of future borrowing costs. It says low-rate, low-carbon technologies like nuclear energy are the most competitive solution compared with coal-fired plants without carbon capture and natural gas-fired combined cycle plants for baseload generation. In countries where coal is low cost, like Australia and some parts of the U.S., the fuel may also be competitive, assuming a discount rate of 5%. If the rate rises to 10%, coal without carbon capture technology will be cheapest, followed by coal with emissions trapping systems and gas plants. Well, as gasoline prices head toward $3 a gallon, supporters of ethanol are trying to remind consumers what prices might be without it. Today on Capitol Hill, ethanol backers in Congress said they're introducing legislation to extend the 45-cent a gallon blending credit for another 5 years and the tax credit for cellulosic ethanol for another 3. At the same time, ethanol trade groups both want to keep the tariff on imported sugar-based ethanol as well. Without it, they say the domestic ethanol industry will lose jobs.
Extending the tax credits for renewable fuels, a common sense approach at making our country more energy dependent. We've seen how effective these credits have been in spurring the development of these industries. Now we need to extend them. So we know that they're there, and we know that this development can continue further.
The U.S. currently allows blends of ethanol up to 10% in gasoline. EPA could make a decision to raise that blend amount to 15% by summer. The United Mine Workers says BP CEO Tony Hayward used fighting words in describing what he wants to see in a Senate climate bill. Hayward told the Peterson Institute for International Economics that Congress shouldn't go out of its way to help the coal industry in the climate bill. He also touted the benefits of natural gas-fired electricity generation over coal.
So given those facts, it is somewhat surprising that the US is still focused on building coal-fired power plants. In the recent past, coal has accounted for around 50% of US electricity generation, but more than 81% of CO2 emissions. Ramping up US natural gas consumption by a readily achievable 1 trillion cubic feet of gas a year would allow 150 gigawatts of the oldest and most polluting coal plants to be retired.
Well, now the UMW is calling for its members to fight back by boycotting BP. Greenwire says the union sent out an action alert to hundreds of email subscribers today, urging them to think twice about buying gas at BP stations. The natural gas industry was unhappy with language in the Waxman-Markey bill that passed the House last year that many saw as concessions to protect coal jobs and states. BP, one of the petroleum companies, looking for a better deal in the Kerry Graham-Lieberman bill. You can see Clean Skies' Tyler Suter's full report on Tony Hayward's speech right here on the website. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin met today with his Ukrainian counterpart Mykola Azarov to talk about energy issues. Ukraine has sought to review a deal from last year to lower the price for natural gas that it imports from Russia. It has suggested it could offer Moscow a share in its gas pipelines network in exchange. Last year's gas deal followed a pricing dispute that saw Russia's Gazprom gas monopoly cut supplies to EU nations through Ukraine for 2 weeks. Ukraine's newly elected president, Viktor Yanukovych, has promised to improve ties with Russia that worsened under his pro-Western predecessor, who wanted to take Ukraine into NATO and the EU. Well, climate change law won't hurt California's economy. This is according to an analysis by the state's Air Resources Board. The study forecasts higher energy prices from new regulations and a cap-and-trade system for greenhouse gases, but said greater energy efficiency would keep costs manageable in the state. In fact, the report finds parts of the economy will thrive with modest job gains statewide, especially in the alternative energy sector. Business leaders had feared any law would hurt the economy and kill jobs. The Department of Energy has turned down a request by V Vehicles for more than $320 million in federal loans. The company wanted to retrofit a former headlight plant in Monroe, Louisiana, and hire 1,400 people to build a 50-mile-per-gallon four-passenger vehicle. Well, unlike startups Tesla and Fisker, which revealed their car designs early on, V Vehicles have been secretive. What is known is the V vehicle would have used a small conventional gas engine, not an electric or hybrid powertrain. That may have hurt its chances of securing the federal loan. Despite getting $67 million in state incentives, company officials say the federal loan was vital to the company, which has raised $86.5 million in private investment. To curb the use of plastic bags, nearly 24 states are considering implementing a bag fee. Several cities already have a bag tax. Here in D.C., it's 5 cents for both paper and plastic. San Francisco banned plastic bags altogether, but is reducing the amount of plastic bags good for the environment. The American Chemistry Council says no. They say the way to be green is to go plastic.
Plastic bags require much less energy to make, much lower greenhouse gas emissions, less than half the greenhouse gas emissions compared to paper alternatives, and people are becoming aware of that now. And I think that's one of the things that we can build on. Plastic bags help reduce the amount of material you use in the first place, and getting them recycled and giving them a new life is a great opportunity.
Also hear what one D.C. councilman has to say about the plastic industry's effort to be green in Lee Patrick Sullivan's full report here on our website. Let's take a look at some goings-on around the Beltway tomorrow. 8:30 a.m., that Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future starts the second day of its initial meeting. Co-chairman Lee Hamilton and Brent Scowcroft are scheduled to speak at the conclusion. At 9:45, Georgetown Law School has a discussion adapting to climate change problems and solutions, with luncheon remarks by Maria Blair, Deputy Associate Director for Climate Change at the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and that's at the Georgetown Law Campus. That is the Energy Report. We'll see you tomorrow with your latest energy news. For any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, you can email us at contact@cleanskies.com, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, good night.